Okay.
Thank you.
Tell me, when you think of a piggy bank, what do you think of? What's your first?
Pigs.
Money.
Think of a pig, you think of money,
Storing things like money.
storing things, so being able to put things inside of it, having it be a container for something. What else? Anything?
Like a little
Little slot in the top that you put your coins in. Good, you guys hit on all the major stuff.
and a stopper.
And a stopper. Tell me more about that.
Well, because if you put something in it and there's a hole in the bottom, then it's just gonna fall out. But at the same time, you don't want to leave it completely closed because then whatever you put in it, you're never gonna get back
Right.
unless you break it.
So there's a couple of options, right? So you're either going to create your piggy bank with like an exit hole, right? That you're going to have like a cork stopper or something for so that you can get money in and out without breaking it. Or technically, as far as your assignment is concerned, that is not required. So you can make it the traditional old-fashioned way, which they were originally made with no exit hole. So basically the idea was that you put your money in as a way to save, right? And then have you guys ever heard the term like, well, that's going to break the bank, right? Meaning that that's really expensive, meaning that somebody didn't have enough money for that. They were going to have to go home and break their piggy bank. The whole idea of that was that if it was something worth breaking the bank for, it was something really important. That's a method to help people save money, because you wouldn't want to just, grab money out of it and break it unless it was really important, because you'd lose your piggy bank. Right? Does that make sense? So it's up to you as far as if you want to make it with a hole and a stopper, or if you want to make it with the old traditional sealed up method and work with it that way. Okay? What does a piggy bank have to have in order to function correctly?
A container.
It has to be a vessel. It has to be a container with an open space in the middle so that the money can actually go somewhere, right? What else?
Has to have a coin slot.
It has to have a coin slot so you can get the coins in. Is that what you said?
No, I said it has to be cute.
It has to be cute. Cute is not a requirement for function,
Should be.
unless it's like so hideous that you're not even going to use it. I guess that depends on your personal standards, right? What else?
A stopper if you want.
Has to have the stopper if you want to be able to get things out of it easily. And if it doesn't have the stopper, then it has to be breakable. So it can't be so well reinforced that you can't, get it out. Like a steel box with no stopper, probably not a good idea, right?
Yeah.
Other requirements for function.
Doesn't it have to be like white and pretty big?
The size is important. We don't want it so small that it's not going to hold enough coins to make it worth saving, right? If it only holds like $1.82, probably not worth the whole effort, right? But on the flip side, if it's so big that you can't move it or lift it or reach the top of the slot, right, then that's going to have some preventative issues for impeding the function also, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Anything else you can think of?
Feet. Feet.
Feet are part of it. What do the feet do for a vessel, for a container?
Stabilize it.
They stabilize it, yes. So if the design of the piggy bank is unstable, what's going to start to happen after it gets filled up with coins? It's going to tip over, or it's going to wobble, or something like that, right? So that's going to be important too. And something to keep in mind is that as we put more money in it, what happens to the weight of the piggy bank?
It gets
It gets heavier. So it has to be not just stable and not just the right size, but it also has to be strong enough and structurally sound that it can handle the weight of all those coins. That's not a small amount of weight. Okay? Good. Take a look at
someone actually make
this
that?
particular what?
Does someone actually make
These
that?
are not student examples from here. These are research examples that I found.
Okay.
So take a look at this example. While you guys are doing that, I'm going to hop up on the table and adjust this plug so we're not seeing double again, because that's real pain in the butt. I know, but I'm up closer to it and I can see too. It's not just me being crazy, I promise.
Are you sure?
I know, wait. Okay, so what do we notice, excuse me, strengths, weaknesses, characteristics that you guys notice about this bank, this sculptural
It looks
form?
legit. Like it looks
It
legit.
has a platform.
It is recognizable, okay, it has a platform. Tell me more about this platform. You're talking about this thing down here, this like hill, mountain thing?
Yeah.
What do we think that does?
Stabilize.
Stabilizes it, right? Because if we didn't have that, what would it be standing on? The little dinosaur feet, right? Big dinosaur body, little dinosaur feet that are kind of close together
It
too.
looks very heavy though.
It looks very heavy. Talk to me about that.
The bottom has a lot of looking weight to it, so that it makes.
There's a lot of visual weight happening down here, right? And I'm glad that you guys are pointing that out because that means that you learned something yesterday when we talked about visual weight with the wheel pieces, okay? So on a wheel piece, we don't want it to look visually heavy. And I would say in general, most of the projects that we make, we don't want to look visually heavy, particularly at the bottom. The reason I say that is because many of you guys as high school students, you come into high school art and you say, you know, I want to take high school art because I like art and I want to make stuff, right? But I want my art to look good. I want my art to look like the work of a high school student or better, right? I don't want it to look like an elementary student anymore because I'm not an elementary student anymore. And one of those things that can really differentiate you from some earlier levels of art students is the visual weight and being able to control that. If you look back at some of your stuff from elementary, right, it's probably really thick on the bottom, it's really heavy. You didn't know, it's not that you were a bad artist at that point, but you just didn't know about stuff like thin wall construction or about visual balance or things like that. So the idea that you guys are starting to identify that is a really good sign. That means that you're starting to get more into those sophisticated skills. Speaking of sophisticated skills, what else do you notice about this piece?
The detail.
The detail. Tell me more about the detail.
It has wrinkles.
It has wrinkles in the skin, okay? So there's wrinkles not only here, but then also kind of up the neck where it turns, up the, differentiating the chin line here. It's got definite wrinkles down in like the foliage at the bottom. What else? Besides wrinkles, what does it have?
Little spots.
Little spots.
The spots.
How do you think those were constructed?
Additive.
Those are additive textures, yes.
The detail on the base, like the leaves.
Detail on the base.
Yeah.
Yep. So the base has just as much detail as the rest of it so that visually those feel like they belong together. It doesn't just look like it's just sitting on a lump, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Oh, excuse me. Anything else you notice about this one? Where's the coin slot?
It's
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
the, it's on the top. If you look close.
Yeah, you gotta look really close. It's right here. So what's kind of cool about that is it doesn't just like scream piggy bank at you when you walk in the room and see it. First, you kind of notice that it's a dinosaur and it kind of has its own kind of visual, sculptural entity. It has its own essence, right? Then you notice it's a bank, okay? So for your designs, you can determine whether you want your bank to be like really obviously a bank and have the slot be like huge and very pronounced, or if you want it to be a little bit more stealthy, and if you want that slot to be more subtle. Some people have said, you know, well, why would I want it to look really clearly like a bank? I don't want somebody walking into my house and knowing where all my money is, okay? So you can decide how subtle or how obvious you want to make that, okay? And I think this one is pretty smartly done because it goes right along that ridge at the top of the dinosaur, so it doesn't look like that linear detail of that slot is out of place. Okay, make sense? Questions about this one? Would you say this is a strong or a weak example?
Strong.
Strong, agreed. Good. Okay, so this form is a little bit simpler, would you agree?
Yes.
Okay, when we're talking about the actual shape of the form. Okay, now arguably I would say that for a high school level the shape of this form is probably too simple for what we're looking at. I think you guys are capable, I know you guys are capable of a lot more. Okay, you have those three-dimensional, wow, design skills. I don't know why I'm itching all of a sudden, it's not fun. However, what did the artist do to compensate and balance the fact that the form, the structure, is simpler? The designs in the
bottom and the top.
the glaze, right? So yeah, there is some design up here, this like roof-like texture. That is impressive texture, okay? And we can tell that because the glaze over this is actually a transparent glaze. So where the texture is deeper, the glaze pools up and gets thicker and therefore darker. So that transparent glaze, or glaze that breaks over texture, which you guys know about from your tiles, that can help play up even that really shallow difference in the texture. But down here, it's totally smooth. And that is painted with like a fine brush, or maybe even like an underglaze pen, using underglaze with like a clear glaze over it. That's how you would accomplish something like that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Now I'm saying this so that you can start to think about that balance between the surface decoration, meaning like the glaze, the finishing, and the actual sculptural form itself. Okay. However, this is a class, right? Projects get graded, right? Do they get graded after they get glazed? Not really. Okay, so you're really going to have to think about how you're going to demonstrate those sculptural skills in the initial form, the three-dimensional form of the piece itself. Okay, so in this case, your glazing decoration is going to be kind of like icing on the cake after the fact. Questions on that? Okay, good. Okay, take a look at this design. Can you guys see this okay?
Yeah, barrel of money.
How could this have been stronger? First of all, what is weak about this?
Like
It
the
has a
shape.
big hole in the top, it's not even a slot.
It's got a big hole in the top. It's more of like a jug or something like that as opposed to like a true piggy bank. Okay? What else about it is weak?
Kind of
The detail.
The detail level is on the weaker side for sure. What are some ways, or what are some things that this artist could have done in order to make it stronger? Allie.
Make some silver ridges on the barrel instead of having it all brown.
Okay, so vary the color a little bit so there's more contrast in lights and darks in the color, so it's less repetitive from a color standpoint. What else?
It's like really visually heavy.
It's very visually heavy. Okay, it's got a lot of kind of bulk to it. From a piggy bank perspective, we can allow a little bit more of that, certainly, because the function, right, kind of requires that. It has to have some space inside it. But there are some visual tricks that we could do to lighten that up a little bit, right, or to vary it a little bit more. What do you guys think about the fact that it says barrel of money?
It reminds you.
Zoe?
It just says it's a piggy bank. It doesn't. It just says it's a piggy bank and just to steal its money.
Yeah. So it's pretty like almost hit you over the head, obvious. Go ahead, Jay.
Sounds like barrel monkeys.
Sounds like barrel of monkeys. So it reminds you of something. I always tell the story when I get to this slide of my parents. My mom had taken a ceramics class. I believe she was in college at the time. And I'm pretty sure like it was way early in their relationship. Like they were maybe like just starting to date, or I don't even remember. I obviously wasn't around then. So my mom was making this thing in ceramics. It was, I wish I had it. It's like big and heavy and clunky and thick, and no offense to my mom, I love my mom, but it's not really well crafted. And the story goes something along the lines of my dad came into the class one day to like see what she was doing during work time, or they were working there like after class or something, and he didn't know what it was that she was making. Like he couldn't tell what it was. And so she took a tool, and in the side of the thing she wrote I'm and then it wasn't big enough for pencil holder and all that lettering to fit, so she just put PH. And so we have this thing somewhere at my dad's house. It's like this little short, like really heavy, clunky little thing that says I'm a PH. And the point of my story is, if you have to spell it out on the piece with a label like that, you probably could have designed it a little bit differently or a little bit more communicatively, right, in order to get that point across. Okay, so I think a strong piece probably should be able to stand on its own without like a label telling you exactly what it is. We use this concept and this idea with drawing and painting as well when we do social issue painting, where we want to communicate a statement about something. We say, you know, it's stronger if you can get your idea across with the visuals as opposed to having to like use words and spell it out in your painting, okay? Same exact concept. That said, if you want to use letters or lettering as a texture, as like a repetitive detailing where you're using that repetition to create the texture, and it's not necessarily supposed to be a readable element, but you just want it to have that lettering quality, you could certainly do that and not take away from the strength of the design at all. Does that make sense? Okay. In fact, I do have letter stamps. They're from a letterpress type, like a printing press, that you can use to create impressive texture into your clay in a repetitive way, and that can be pretty cool as well. Okay. So taking a look at these, and you do not have to make your piggy bank an animal, it just happens that a lot of them are. How do you notice, what is the two difference, no, I'm saying this totally wrong. What is the difference between how these two examples are created, looking specifically at the appendages, things like arms and legs? So,
Small and
Jay.
small and snubby.
Small and stubby. They both have kind of shorter limbs, right? So that's important. Why would it not be a good idea for limbs to be really long and extended far?
It's gonna break off.
They would break off, okay? So you wouldn't be able to have any sort of support to hold them up, but especially not if they were hollow and eventually filled up with coins, right? However, the two are constructed differently. Can you tell what those differences are?
The elephant's like connected and the bear isn't.
Yes. So the bear, the way that the limb is connected is right at the end. Okay, only the end of the limb is connected. Whereas on the elephant, the whole length of that limb is connected all the way down for both the arms and the legs. Do you guys see that?
Yes.
From a functional standpoint, thinking of how a piggy bank needs to work, I don't know why I'm talking so fast. I'm just really excited about piggy banks. Which one is stronger?
I said the
The
elephant.
elephant. Yes. Why?
Has more detail.
Okay, it has more detail, but how about how the limbs are connected?
It just brings your eye to it.
It allows more space on the inside, okay? So especially since like this is all going to be hollow construction, right? So now if we think about the open space in here, those coins can fill up into the limbs as well. That limb actually adds space onto kind of the regular body of the elephant, okay? Even if they still did here, like even if this was open here, when you dropped a coin in, would they flow out into
Of course,
those
that's what
limbs?
gravity
Yeah.
does.
Yeah, gravity doesn't exactly work that way, right? So you could certainly angle them down. There are some adjustments that you could make to do that. But I'm showing you this so that you can think about what your structure needs to have and how it needs to be positioned in order to make that really effective for what your piggy bank needs to do and how to serve its purpose. Make sense? Okay. Okay, here's another really good reminder for you. Stylization is a good thing. Sometimes, and again, we do not have to make it into animals, okay? If you want to make it into any other object, that's fine. But sometimes when we kind of have an object in mind, we try to make it, we get in the habit of thinking that it has to look exactly like that, okay? Do either of these look exactly like their inspirational object?
No.
No, right?
For instance, the bear's more
Certainly we don't see bears with like geometric angles
That'd be kind of weird.
out in the wild, okay? Certainly we don't see dogs that have, over half their height as their head.
I thought that was a bunny.
You thought it was a bunny? I could see how you would think that with
Looks
the
like a
long
bunny.
ears.
It's like how it goes
Like how it has like this.
Exactly.
Okay? The idea here is that it's okay to make things look in a non-realistic style. Okay? It's okay to exaggerate certain features. It's okay to make the surface unrealistic. That's totally fine. In fact, it's probably stronger from a creative standpoint, right? If you can think about how you want to portray it in your style rather than just worrying about how to make it exactly, resemble what you were thinking of. Does that make sense? Okay. That said, it is good to use a reference picture if you want it to look like it. Okay, and you can definitely do that. You can look up a picture of something, use that to help you get those proportions or get certain shapes right.
So like in jewelry, we weren't allowed to use like I wanted to use Stitch from Lilo and Stitch for something, but it's technically someone else's artwork. Is that the same with this? Like we
Yes, it is the same. So character like Tweety Bird or Bugs Bunny or any character that somebody else has designed, we can't use because it's not our design.
Oh, me.
But what is Stitch? Is it a dog?
No,
He's
it's
an
like
alien.
an alien.
It's an alien. Okay, so you could still do an alien. You just can't do Stitch. Okay, or you could do a bird. You can't do a Tweety Bird. Okay, and my suggestion, just to make it easier on yourself, would be to jump far away from that idea and not even try to make it similar, because the trap that sometimes we can fall into when we try to make things similar is it's hard
Come
to
back out.
make that distinction between one and the other, and that skill comes once you have a really thorough grasp of design concepts, and typically at this level it's really, really difficult. So it ends up being way more stressful. That's my point. Good question. We talked a little bit about weight distribution and about making sure that your piggy bank is stable and not going to fall over or break or any of those
Bad thing.
unwanted results. So between the two of these, which one appears more stable?
Whoa. Monkey.
The monkey. Why?
Because it has its bottom on the floor.
So there's more actually touching the ground surface, okay? But also, look at where the widest point of that monkey is, where presumably it's going to hold the most of its weight. It's towards the bottom, right? This one, they did something to kind of try to counteract that. Can you tell what they did?
With the feet.
It has to do with the feet and the pants and the bag. So what did they do to make this one less top heavy and more stable?
Connected the feet.
They connected the feet. Yep. So all this is one big kind of reservoir for the coins to go into. Okay? And I'm not sure, I think the slot is up here. So presumably something inside would maybe cut this off a little bit so that the coins had to go down in here and they couldn't get stuck out there. I don't know. I don't have this piece in my possession to be able to identify that. But you need to think about where most of the coins are going to sit and where that weight is going to sit. Okay? Any questions so far at all? I went kind of fast through that. Okay. So your next step is going to be to create some thumbnail sketches. Okay. For each thumbnail sketch, I want you to do a front view and a side view. Okay. The reason for that is because if we don't think about the side view, it's too easy for us to only think about the front view, how it's flat. And then it's hard for us to translate that into a three-dimensional object when it comes time to build it. We end up with a bunch of really flat, unstable piggy banks that don't hold very much. Okay? So I want you to think about front view and side view, and I want to, as best as you can, right? Because I know it's tough to draw, but I want you, as best as you can, to just draw both views. Okay? The whole point of that is I want you to think about where things are going to stick out, where they're going to balance, how they're going to carry weight, all of that stuff. Okay? Like I said, if you want to use reference images, a lot of people find that really helpful, especially for the side views, so that you can kind of see. For example, when we draw people, okay, we often don't think about the fact that the eyes actually go into the skull rather than sit on top of the skull. And now those are, general things that are very normal for us to assume, even though it's wrong. Okay, so the reference images, especially for those side views, are going to help you quite a bit if you want your piggy bank to look like a particular object. Does that make sense? Any questions at all? Okay. So remember I said I was going to share with you the order of how we need to accomplish things, because we're doing wheel pieces and piggy banks. There's a lot going on at once. This time of year it gets a little bit hectic. Your number one priority today is your wheel, or no, you already said that, Rob. Your number one priority today is your piggy bank thumbnails. Okay, so step number one, piggy bank thumbnails. Once those are checked in, which they should be by tomorrow, then your number one priority is going to be the wheel practice. So we have 8 wheels. Those should all be full and in use every day. Only if the wheels are full, then, should you come back and work on your piggy bank. So the piggy bank is kind of your backup project at this point to keep you working on something when the wheel is full and when it is not available. Does that make sense? Because otherwise what happens, this is very bad, is people get so just kind of in the groove working on their piggy banks and they totally forget about the wheel, and all of a sudden the wheel projects are due and the wheels are all full and they can't get it done. And I would hate to see you fall into that trap, for lack of a better word. Okay, it's tempting, I know. Any other questions? Okay, then for the remainder of today, if you want to log into the computer and get reference images, you may. If you want to just sketch from the top of your head without, that's totally fine too. Work on those thumbnails. I will check them in as soon as you have them. I don't expect you to get done with them in the next, 7 minutes, but certainly by sometime tomorrow. And then also make sure that you are bringing and wearing clothes that you can work on the wheel with so that we can get that done as well. And I will go tackle the copier and get it to actually print my stuff.